Well, hello everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Our Go Global webinar series continues with today's webinar, Asking the Experts on E-Commerce in China. Thank you very much today for joining us. Welcome to you all. I'm so pleased to see that there are so many attendees today. I've just been looking at the list and from across Europe and the USA. So wherever you are, welcome. You are very welcome, and we will do our level best to ensure that you get real value from your time with us today. I take this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is John Worthington. You don't see me on the cover there. You see Susanna Hardy, our Director of Client Services, and Paul Swenson, our Director for China. But I am CEO here at IBT, and I really do love and support our webinar program, our Go Global webinar series. It's a great way to learn. It's a great way to share information, and so we conduct these regularly, about 2 a month to be precise. Personally, I always like to attend webinars and listen to selected thought leaders in terms of what's going on out there. There's so much innovation, there's so much new online. It's crucial to keep up to speed, and well, nowhere more so than in China, which is today the subject of our webinar. I'd like to just notify you that we have a really great and broad program that has been prepared for you. I've seen a lot of background work going on between Susanna and Paul, so there's a lot of really good, useful information for you. But before I let both of them loose on you, a few moments of housekeeping. So do know that this webinar is one of our series. You'll not be surprised to know that our objective is to help you grow your business and grow that online and grow that globally. For future webinars, do check out our website, our resources section. That's ibtpartners/webinars. And we have been running this program for well over 2 years now. So there is an excellent catalog of recordings. And again, just go to IBT/resources webinars and webinars on demand. Today's webinar will be approximately 45 minutes. So brief introduction by myself, and then I will hand over to Susanna, our host presenter today, and Paul Swenson, our China guru. There will be 5 polls today, so please be ready with your mice, get ready to join in and participate. There will, of course, be questions at the end, so please, in your box down there, you can see on the right-hand side of your screen under polls, there'll be questions. Please submit your questions. Just continue that. There's also a chat box. Hey, let's chat while we have this webinar. At the end of the webinar, there'll be a brief 5 quick questions survey. So I will be asking you to give us 5, just answer these 5 questions. It'll literally take you no more than 1 minute. And finally, do know that we will provide you with a copy of this recording. A copy of this webinar will be sent to you, including a slide deck, on Friday. So just sit back, enjoy, whether it is the afternoon or the early morning for you, enjoy, and I hope that this webinar will provide you with lots of useful information. Now, a moment on our host presenter, Susanna Hardy. Susanna is a founding director here at IBT and is head of all of our client services. And that's all about being online globally, so website building and marketing programs that we deliver for our clients. Susanna was educated and has lived and worked in the US, that's principally in New York, and actually across here in Europe, and that for her means Germany, Belgium, the UK, and France. Susanna does speak German, French, English, and Dutch, and has put these language skills and web marketing skills to great use for our clients over many years. Paul Swenson is our VP Asia Pacific, and Paul has lived and worked in China for over 25 years. And Paul has helped companies successfully export and grow their business in China. Paul has gone native. Paul lives there and is married locally and has 2 children, 2 young boys, and Paul received his undergraduate degrees in economics and Asian studies from St. Olaf's College and a master's degree from Cornell University, and has Chinese language certification from the East China Normal University in Shanghai. Paul, we're very lucky to have Paul for many reasons, not least he's a much sought after conference speaker on Chinese e-commerce, and he leads all of our China web programs, right from site build to the online marketing programs, as you will hear about later. Now, before we dive into it, I thought just a quick chat. I know Susanna has landed, has come back to London after 5 days in Hong Kong. So not only I think Susanna might be a little jet lagged, it is after all 1 o'clock in the morning over in Hong Kong, but Susanna used the time to learn a lot about online in China. And for your information, Paul is actually in Shanghai. So it's actually 1 a.m. in the morning with Paul. It is Thursday the 17th of November. So good morning to you, Paul. I think a little applause to say, hey, amazingly done. And so, Paul, how are you? And Susanna, how are you there in London?
Well, good morning, John.
Okay, so first of all, well, perhaps a word to the lady first. Susanna, how are you and how was Hong Kong?
Hong Kong was fantastic. It's a very invigorating place, and I think we all should make an effort to go and visit and spend time in China on a regular basis. There's so much going on, so much innovation, so much change, and really, as I said, very invigorating.
Great.
Great to be there.
Well,
Paul?
Thank you. Yeah, Paul, over to you. Good morning to you, Paul. Is it a beautiful night in Shanghai?
Good morning, John. As they say, Shanghai is the city that never sleeps, and I can vouch for that. And e-commerce here doesn't sleep either. We're right in the middle of the lull between the Singles Day holiday, where Alibaba just had massive sales, and the Black Friday holidays coming out of the US.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we can't just chat too long because all of our listeners are dying to hear the content of what we've got going on. So I think the takeaway, please, is dear attendees, do know as you're listening to this, both Paul and Susanna have a huge knowledge of understanding for e-commerce in China, which we're about to share for you. Lastly, a brief intro about IBT. We are a private company. We're a firm of online engineers and business developers with profiles like Susanna and Paul around the world. We've been in business for over 15 years. Our core activity is helping you grow your business online and internationally, and nowhere more so than today's market. That is, let's get into China and do successful business in China. Our core message, therefore, is go global with website localization. And, well, there you go. Today, in today's world, a company's #1 asset for marketing and sales, that is building your top line, is of course their digital presence. It's the online presence, it's the web presence and web marketing. So with that said, Susanna, over to you, and we're off. Thank you very much. I'm just going to go, here you go, another of my little sounds.
4,
here we go,
3,
to get us going.
2, 1.
Right, there you go, Susanna, over to you.
Well, blast off. Thank you very much, John, and welcome to all exporters. Today we're going to be talking obviously about China. I want Paul to give you sort of a brief snapshot, real snapshot view, top-down view of China online, some of the bigger numbers, some of the bigger drivers of what's going on in this huge market. Then I'm going to be talking a bit more about particularly some distributor platforms and what are the choices that you have in e-commerce. And then Paul's going to talk about some of the detail, both in terms of the fulfillment and some case studies and examples and best practices. And then we've left some time for questions at the end, and we would, as John was saying, we would really encourage you and welcome any questions and feedback you have. So feel free to drop them into the question box as we go along, and we'll curate the questions as we go. So with that, I'd love, Paul, if you're there, to just start off with giving us a snapshot of China and doing business in China.
Well, thank you, Susanna. As you look at China, you can see on the screen a brief map of the country. And the thing that's important to remember is that you have a tremendously large country of 1.3 billion people, but you also have a tremendous number of internet users within the country. And if you look down the slide a bit, you can see that the country has a lot of mountainous regions, with very little of the country actually being lowland plains. And so you have a very dense population in the lowland plains, which means that you have extremely large cities. We have a growing middle class, and as you look at the middle class, you also need to realize that Han Chinese people are the largest ethnic group in the world. They make up 19% of the global population. And the buyers that you're addressing for China may not be in China. They may be in the US, they may be in the UK, France, and countries around the world. And so as you look at a Chinese language site, you're really looking at a larger global environment than simply China by itself. As you look at the slide here, which has the map of China that's not labeled, it's the thing that we like to show this slide for is to let you know that you should be thinking about China as more like the European Union rather than a single country, because you have people in North China and people in South China who communicate with each other through a common language, but that common language is more like the equivalent of trying to use English for communication between, say, a Finn and a Greek in Europe. Their cultures are very different, their customs are very different, their food is very, very different, and they're communicating using a language which should be common to both, but actually may lead to some communication issues. It's important to remember as you look at China also to register your trademarks, especially if you're going to be there online with retail products. And finally, tell an engaging story about your company. That's very important whether you're doing B2B business or whether you're doing business to consumer, B2C business. So we always advise people to tell a good story about your company and about your products.
Paul, that's great. Well, look, thank you. I'm proposing that we jump into a first poll, making sure that everybody is as wide awake and as attentive as you are. So here we go. There is a quick poll that I'm launching. Here you go. Now, this is all about, are you currently doing business in China? So please let us know. Tell us what you're doing over there. Are you yes via a rep agent, distributors, e-commerce platforms, thinking about it? You have multiple choices here. I'll give you some feedback. 36% are saying yes via rep, 36% are saying yes via distributor, 25% via e-commerce platforms, a full 27% are saying that they're thinking about it, and 16% are currently doing no. So with that, what I'm doing is I'm closing. That's poll number one over, and Paul, I come back to you. It's all yours.
Well, as we look at slide 6, you can see the e-commerce market size in terms of China and the United States, and you can see that even though China has a lower number of buyers as you look at a proportion of their total population, that the U.S. penetration of internet users is already at 88.5%, whereas in China right now the penetration is only 52%, and so it leaves a tremendous amount of market opportunity and market growth. And the U.S. is the third largest country in terms of the number of internet users behind both China and India, which creates vibrant environments in the Chinese market as well as in the Indian market for the e-commerce business. As we review the market growth on slide 7, you can see that you're facing a very aggressive growth arc. This year the business was about $600 billion, and going into the next few years you're experiencing growth rates well over 31%, which means that there are tremendous opportunities for companies as they come into the market. On slide 8, we got some really interesting insights through some of our partners here in China as to the buying habits, and there were very clearly 3 peaks during the day. The first peak was between 8:30 and 10 a.m., which coincidentally is when most of the white-collar staff arrive in the offices, but when most of the senior staff members are still in staff meetings and conference calls with locations around the world. So they're using that time to their best advantage to purchase products globally, which was really interesting. We were expecting a second peak probably at 12 o'clock, which is the typical lunchtime here in China. But what we found out was the peak actually took place an hour later, between 1 and 2, when most white-collar and blue-collar staff members are back from lunch, but when most of the management would still be out at lunch. So again, using the time while the cat is away, the mice will play, so to speak. And then finally, the final peak of e-commerce purchasing very closely mirrors what we see in the United States and in Europe. Between 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock at the end of the day, as they're starting to wind up their day, then people are online and shopping. And as we looked at the weekend, there was very little activity on Saturdays, but we did see a lot of Sunday shopping, both in the morning and in the afternoon, because typically Sunday lunch times are a family lunch, and so you see people getting together for a lunch, and we had the 2 spikes on Sundays. And one of the things that's most interesting and that you need to bear in mind as you set up your sites globally is that 71% of all of the e-commerce transactions in China take place on a mobile device. So if your website doesn't display well on a mobile device, in all likelihood the Chinese buyers aren't going to be visiting your site to go ahead and purchase products online. And finally, I wanted to address what Chinese buyers are buying. So we see a lot of food being purchased, and we divide the 3 areas up into roughly food, fashion, and family. So in addition to food products, a lot of spirits, wine, beer, a lot of imported products coming into the country, and a lot of nutritional supplements, which are a traditional gift that you would give family or coworkers or others. In fashion, it gets really interesting in that addition to the things that you would normally think about as fashion, clothing, bags, outerwear, cosmetics, perfumes, that sporting equipment is also considered to be a fashion statement. And so you see skis, snowboards, footwear, outdoor apparel, tents. Those are all considered also to be fashionable items to buy. And surprisingly, automotive, whether it's auto parts or whether it's spare parts, decoration, motor oils, car waxes, there's just a tremendous and a vibrant environment of setting out automotive as a fashion good. And finally, fashion. That includes both babies and infant products, including their food, as well as anything an infant could possibly use, including their toys. And also the extended family. Everybody wants to keep their pets healthy, so you have pet supplies, leashes, and pet snacks, and you have a really vibrant environment where there's very family-centric purchasing behavior.
Paul, amazing, and therefore that leads absolutely into the next poll. I'd love to launch poll number 2, so please, everybody, here you go. Here's the second poll. It's about to be launched. There you go. Please, what's your view? Do you already sell via e-commerce? So it does link back to it, links back to these slides. Now, how are you doing? Yes, domestically and internationally. Domestic markets and internationally, but not yet China. So this is e-commerce everywhere and domestic. Or are you thinking about it? Now, let me give you some feedback. 53% are saying they're thinking about it. 5% are saying no, and 26% say yes domestically and internationally. That is very interesting. Look, I'm going to close this poll. I want to thank you for contributing again. There you go. That's shutting down poll number 2 and handing back to Paul. Paul, over to you again.
Actually, to me, if I could just jump in, John, I wanted to go through a couple of e-commerce possibilities and choices. So these are the main sort of e-commerce and choices one has at the moment that we see from our clients looking at what they can do on e-commerce. And this goes for B2B and B2C. There are basically three ways to go about it in the Chinese market. The first are the big, what we call online malls. And I've put an American there, Amazon, and I've put a Japanese there, Rakuten. And there were four in the middle are the Chinese ones, led very much by Alibaba. Then there are the other choice, the next choice, is really to sell via your local distributor or a local partner. That can be an agent, a rep, a distributor, whatever. That is typically a way that we see a new to export, new to market company going in. Very often if it's a B2B company, and that makes sense. I mean, let your distributor do the work. You know, let your distributor do the marketing, do the outreach into the market, and that's an easy way to do it. I would say that there's a couple of issues there, though, that you have to be careful about longer term, and we'll talk about those in another slide. And then a third way, which we see increasing, a growing number of our clients taking on, is to build their own Chinese websites and to regain and pull back in control on that. And we'll discuss a bit more about that. First, let me talk a little bit about these online malls and what that means. So really, globally, there are like these three global giants that I put out there. You know, in the U.S., you've got Amazon, which is the leader. In China, you've got Alibaba. And then in Japan, you've got Rakuten. In China, you do have other ones, but you know, Alibaba is the leader, and I'll dive down a bit more into that. And Paul has already mentioned JD.com and Tmall and others. Now, I think what's interesting here is that this, particularly Alibaba and Rakuten, are slightly different from Amazon. Amazon is like it's an all-inclusive service. You know, submit the product, and Amazon will look after everything. Alibaba and Rakuten and most of the non-Amazon online malls have what's called an open system. So you could submit your product, but then you have to figure out what kind of facilities you want for logistics, fulfillment, payment, and so on. They'll propose things, but it's not automatic. And again, we'll go through that a little bit later too. So these are a great way for sort of new to market, early exporters, sort of to have a first toe in the water in this sense. That's you know, typically though you'll quickly find, especially if you're B2B, that the disadvantages of an online mall weigh quite heavily, in particular about your brand identity, and how do you maintain and grow a brand over internationally and globally. It's very hard to do that on an online mall. So just talking about Alibaba in particular, I want to just mention a few things there. It's just such a huge company, a growing company, and then as Paul was saying, it's just had its Singles Day. It's the largest shopping day online in China. That was the 11th of November. And the numbers are actually really staggering. At one point, you know, there were on average 175,000 orders per second. That's what was being processed. And I thought what was interesting as well, this also reflected back, was when Paul was saying that the Chinese, you know, a Chinese website does not just cater for the Chinese in China, it's global. There were cross-border transactions in 235 countries. Now, there's only about 250 countries in the world, so that's quite something. And the Alipay, again, the payment process proposed by Alibaba had over 1 billion payment transactions processed over the one day. This is quite important as well because Alibaba is building up its hardware and its software to go with it in anticipation of those very high growth rates that they're looking forward to over the coming years. They've got huge infrastructure programs going on at the moment for Australia, Japan, Europe, just in this year and next, and then Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and more in Japan actually scheduled for 2017 as they build out Alibaba Cloud. It's the largest cloud infrastructure service provider now in China. And I was looking at some numbers by a study by Morgan Stanley recently saying, you know, they will basically reach and even exceed Amazon's level by about 2020 at this rate, including an EBITDA. So really a very staggering growth rate on there for Alibaba. Worth having some good knowledge about it as we go forward. Now, going back onto distributor platforms, and here I was looking at Chinese distributor platforms, but they're so hard to understand that I thought for most of us we'll stick to the sort of European and American examples of what I mean by distributor platforms. So you could have these generalist platforms like a big store, like, you know, Elf or Lowe's of appliances for DIY, or else you could have very dedicated industry vertical distributor sites, and these can be wholesale or retail sites. I guess the pros and cons, really, the pros we've already mentioned is it's sort of really easy. You can just let your distributor do the walking, and just let your distributor do most of the work. They will have to do their own websites, and they will have to do the marketing of it as well. The disadvantage is that you're opening yourself up immediately to product comparison. So if you're on there, your distributor has perhaps competing products or similar products, and also it's not clear that your distributor always has your best margins in mind. You may want to sell more of another product, in fact, and be placing your product in not the most beneficial way. So you are opening yourself up quite a lot to competition. It's a great solution if you're just starting out in the market and if you have really great relations with a distributor. But what happens if something ever goes wrong? And so that's, I think, also the thing to work out with. So, you know, distributor platforms carry the risk of taking ownership of your brand in a way that you may not agree with. So the bottom line is, you know, where especially where e-commerce is concerned, you know, make sure that you keep your brand in control. Make sure that you have the real control over your brand, your pricing, your presentation. And that again leads us back to country-specific localized websites that we feel have the best advantages for you. And here we're looking at localized websites and global websites that are e-commerce enabled, but and here you have the choice. You can either go on an online mall via your website or through a distributor, give access to your website to a distributor, or have your own e-commerce platform. And this is something that we are seeing clients do increasingly, including in China. They're no longer quite so worried and quite so apprehensive about that market, beginning to really say, no, well, let me take control of my digital presence, my online presence. So building a country-specific website in China, and then using that website to gain the control, to gain the audience participation that they want, or allowing their local partner to use that website. So with that, I just wanted to give a quick poll as well. John, if we could.
Absolutely, Susanna. Here we are. We're marching already along into our third poll. So here we go. This poll is being launched now, so please be ready. Here we go. Launch. Do you have localized websites? Getting back to what Susanna was saying for your export markets, there you go. Are you on it? Are you localized? How are you doing? 100% domain names are registered. That's great. Translated websites, mobile-enabled websites, search engine optimized websites, and relevant social media. So 50% are mobile enabled, therefore that does need attending to. 40%, 30% actually on search engine optimization, and 60% are saying they're active on social media. That's very interesting. We will give this information back to you on Friday. Thank you for that. I'm going to close the poll now with the information that we have. Thank you so much. And Susanna, I hand back to you.
Thank you very much, John. I wanted actually now to turn back to Paul to talk about sort of the Chinese options that you have, particularly about online platforms which you could use in China. So, Paul?
Thank you, Susanna. As you look here, you'll see a number of Chinese platforms. Kaola.com, the company there at the top, is actually the largest cross-border e-commerce website in China. They specifically do cross-border e-commerce rather than both domestic and cross-border e-commerce. The small black cat is Alibaba's site, Tmall, and they also have a website which is a little bit closer to an auction site called Taobao. And as Susanna mentioned, the Singles Day holiday just ended, but in one day, Alibaba's site sold over $17.8 billion in product in a single day. So that gives you an idea of the scale of their market size, and that's both domestic as well as foreign transactions. And the additional item here is that you can sell off of your own website as well as being able to sell off of vendor websites like Alibaba or JD or Kaola. And you can do it in a number of different ways. If we go to slide 16, here are a couple of companies that sort of stand out. The first company, Doshobang, we just call it DSB for short, is really interesting in that they operate a mobile platform, which I'll get into in a minute. Fedroad is actually a logistics company which can provide you with e-commerce integration so that you can do integrated shipments overseas directly off of your US or your European websites and Japanese websites. And WeChat is China's social media platform, so you can think about it a little bit like Facebook in the United States. As we move to slide 17, this outlines the Doshobang model. So as somebody places an order on their handheld interface, it actually pushes a real-time product search out to their customer and then pushes a transaction back to the overseas or Chinese domestic website where that transaction is going to take place, and then provides the fully automated fulfillment instructions. And so the address fields, the payment fields, everything is automatically completed by the Doshobang site, and then the product is delivered to the customers. And it's a very, very interesting platform. And one of the things that they do is to work with their partners, and then they actually pull the content off of their partners' website pages and have a very advanced translation mechanism in place to do a very simple product description for the product and provide the price of the product in local currency, and then in addition to incorporate the shipping option. And so if you clicked on any of these items here on slide 18, you would actually see that it would transfer you directly to the Amazon website or the Nature's Made Vitamin website or wherever that product was resident, so that they could compare prices directly with the company in the US. And it's a very, very interesting model. From a logistics perspective, Fedroad is really interesting in that what it does is offer consolidated shipments and customs clearance information for its customers. And so as people purchase off of sites in a foreign location, in Italy, in France, in the UK, in the United States, their packages are then sent to a local consolidation point where they're then put onto pallets and shipped to China with all of the customs documentation. When they arrive in China, those pallets are broken back up into personal parcel shipments. And because they're personal parcel shipments, the duty rates on those products are much lower. And especially for cosmetics, for electronics, and for other products that could be subject to a lot of regulation in China, those products coming in as personal parcels are considered as the same status as if they had flown to Paris, had shopped, and had brought those products back with them to China. And so they clear customs at a much lower duty rate, and it works out really well. And the last section here that I want to talk about is the sales through social media. Here on slides 19, 20, and 21, you see the interface for WeChat, which is what I talked about as the social media platform. It's largely mobile-based. They do have a desktop version of the application, but most people use this on their telephones to communicate with friends, business partners, and others. What's become very popular is for US and European companies to develop microsites on WeChat so that as people engage online, that they can recommend companies to each other. And many of those microsites also have an e-commerce function. So as we look at slide 20 here, you can see from the first two slides that they actually then move into a product description. If they click the purchase button, then they're able to go ahead and complete the transaction without ever leaving this social media application. And many multinational companies actually use many of the chat rooms on the WeChat platform to be able to market their product to actual buyers and to concerned parties. And many of the WeChat gurus with very large networks will actually push out product recommendations to their friends and their contacts via the social media platform. And so it's a fabulous way to undertake a guerrilla marketing campaign and to be able to have a very robust presence on easily the most used social media platform in China. And we get asked often, how do I get paid for buyers from China? The first is Union Pay. Union Pay is a credit card.
Paul, before we get on to the payment, can we just do a quick little poll?
Absolutely. Sorry, Susanna.
Okay.
No problem. Let's do a quick poll here.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's this one is please, if you're ready. There's this is poll number 4, and I'm going to launch this, so please look at your screens. Here we go. I'm launching it. This poll is, how do you market internationally? Are you attending international trade shows? Is this online and social media? Is this paid advertisement through distributor, manufacturers, reps, and visiting prospective international customers? So please give us your views. I'm going to give you feedback. A big 100% say visiting prospect international customers. There you go. That's actually come down to 90% now. 55 through distributors, 33 through paid advertising, 80% for both attending trade shows and online social media. That is very interesting. There you go. Thank you very much. We will get this information back to you. I'm closing this poll. There we go. And I'm handing back. Thank you very much indeed for your attention.
Thank you, John. Payments make me really excited, so I got a little carried away there. But as you look at how to accept payments from your Chinese clients, there are 3 main payment programs which you can use. The first is Union Pay, which is a multi-currency credit card that's held by many Chinese customers through their banks. And actually now almost 80% of US merchants have the ability to accept the Union Pay credit cards, either online or through the pay terminals in the different shopping malls and shops. And so it's already a very widely available payment mechanism to accept payments from China. The second is Alipay, and Alipay has recently taken their payment program globally. And Alipay is really interesting in that they actually also have a credit score which is attached to their performance in paying through Alipay. So people who make payments and then go ahead and settle that debt very quickly are given very high credit scores. And it's just a fascinating program, but now is available in countries across the world and will be coming to many other countries, as Susanna said, soon. And finally, WeChat Pay this year is entering the US and European markets and has a tremendous number of followers available online. And we encourage people to look at which one of the payment plans best fits their model. If you're selling on WeChat, likely being able to accept WeChat Pay would be where you'd want to go. Otherwise, Alipay is easily the largest global player, and for online websites, Alipay would be a must-have. And I'd like to send it back over to Susanna, who's going to talk to us a little bit about going ahead and optimizing your site for use in China.
Thank you very much, Paul. That was fantastic. Great summary and things. And I just really wanted to show this one slide. We've done a couple of different webinars only focused on optimizing websites for China and optimizing websites for international and global markets. So I won't spend any real time on this. We've sort of run out of time on that. But I just wanted to share this one slide just to give the sort of top things that we have, the top 5 sort of keys, drivers that we would highlight. Obviously, the first is search engine optimization. It's not about Google in China, it's about Baidu. Baidu has about an 85% market share at the moment in China as a search engine. For a mobile, it has about a 78% market share, but it's right up there. So, you know, if you're using a US website and optimizing it so that Google likes it, it's not necessarily the same as Baidu. Both of them are still concerned mostly with good quality content, but the way they operate is a little bit different. And again, I would, we do have assets on this. We have things that you can download from our website on that, and have a recent blog just on it, in fact. But it's worth remembering that Baidu is the key for optimizing your site in China. The next thing I want to highlight really is about speed, both for upload and download. Now, the infrastructure, the sort of backbone of the hardware available in China is actually quite varied. So you won't get good speed in all places. But, for example, I was in Hong Kong last week, and they're to 5G. If you're not fast, if you're not really fast upload and download, your target audiences, B2B and B2C, will not be pleased. They will just go off and very, very quickly. So if you're looking at them from outside China, we would certainly say 3 to 4 seconds is pretty acceptable. But really within China, it's got to be very fast. Actually, it's interesting. One of the little technical things we had with today's webinar was that Paul, sitting in Shanghai, is having a delay with the slides coming through. So that's the kind of thing that one can see very real time about the different infrastructure hardware that's available. The next we would talk about really is user experience. This is really, really important for China, and has to do with the way the Chinese, or any market, but the way that the Chinese will actually interact and identify with us, how comfortable they will be with that. And there's a couple of different things one can use with that, and one of them is just sort of using really good native Chinese expertise in there, but also some software. For example, we recommend certain what are called spider simulators that Google has, but also Baidu have, to really test out how the crawlers and spiders work on looking through a website and how they rank it. The next is clearly, the fourth point is really social media, the importance of that. In China, it is absolutely vital, and I think Paul has really mentioned, you mentioned sort of the importance of WeChat. It's not to be underestimated. It's just one of the keys, and again, B2B and B2C, it's necessary to have a social media strategy for any global company, but any exporter looking at China without a social media strategy will quickly fall flat, I'm afraid. So you've got to keep that in right from the beginning. And then finally, optimize for mobile and for multi-channel. We've already mentioned that over 70% of all transactions on e-commerce take place on a mobile platform. And I can tell you just anecdotally, just ride the metro, the underground, the MTR on Hong Kong, and every single person that you can see up and down is at least one mobile phone in their hand. Sometimes, very often, two mobile phones in their hands. Amazing to see. So really, if you're not mobile enabled, you're not going to be getting good hit rates and good reception in the Chinese market. So with good mobile platforms, get good conversion rates. And typically, for example, for us, when we're looking at designing sites for our clients, in China, very often we design a site from a mobile perspective to start with, and then transfer and see what it would look like on a fixed PC. It's rather the opposite of what we would do for a European or American website. So but again, I would say we have lots more about optimizing your website in China, but if that's the sort of a summary, as it were. But I just wanted to give you this last little summary here. I couldn't miss this New Yorker. I did see that, 80% of success is just being there, according to Woody Allen. So I thought that is absolutely what we're talking about in terms of websites in China. It's just be there, be present, be seen, make sure that your audience likes you, appreciates you, and that you are talking from the same page. So with that, if you have time for some last questions, John?
Well, I like that. Yes, Woody Allen showing up there in China to show us how. I guess that's it, isn't it? You've got to be there. You've got to be there online, and you've got to be there mobily online and through social media, as Paul and Susanna have been saying. Indeed, is it question time? Because I'm looking at the time slot, and we are sort of running a few minutes late. If this is a question slide, then in that case, I will go to the question panel and begin to pull out the questions. Let me go quickly now. Paul, I guess this one flips back to you. In many ways, I heard you cover it and saw that slide. The first question that up here is saying, again, how do I get paid by Chinese customers? I guess without flipping back to the side, the quick summary, Paul, is? Paul, are you there?
It's actually easier to get paid by Chinese customers than you think it is. There are a lot of tools that are available for you to use not only in your overseas websites but in a Chinese website, and we look forward to working with you and answering any questions that you have on payments.
Okay. I didn't quite get all of that, but because we're limited on time, I'm going to hand over quickly, Susanna, 15 seconds top chrono, as they say, about paid advertising. This one says, does this work on China websites? AdWord, paid ads. Susanna.
Yes, absolutely. And we would, obviously, for us, it's all about organic search and building a brand and so on, but there's nothing wrong with paid advertisement as well, particularly if there's a new product launch or a trade show and you need to just boost your website and your products a little bit more. We see that a lot when people are going to the big trade shows in Asia World or in China. And it works rather similarly to the European or the American sites. And we would recommend that as a strategy to complement your localized website, which is growing organically in any case. Thank you, John.
Yeah, great. That does make sense. So indeed, paid ad as a supplement to what you're already doing there. Which brings me on to, I've got two more questions I'm going to dive into. I've selected a quick one for Susanna, then last one for Paul. Susanna, Chinese websites to get good up and download related to what you're saying, I guess this is, what about user experience and speeds?
Indeed, it's just basically how to get the good speeds. You can't guarantee it because, as I said, the infrastructure is sometimes a bit patchy in some parts of China. But one thing that you want to do is make sure that you're also directing all your traffic through servers in China. And that's now, you can do things that are very, very trustworthy, very safe, and make sure that really helps your speed. is make sure that your are located and your servers are located in China or nearby. Thanks.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. And so, Paul, finally, so that we can let you go to bed to this at some stage, here's one. We're a B2B company. We use a lot of videos on our website to describe our products. Can I use them on a Chinese site as well? Paul, that's the last closing question. Over to you.
Similar to Susanna's recent remarks, one of the most important things is being able to compress that video so that it downloads very quickly. And a lot of companies actually use links to YouTube video. However, YouTube is banned in China, and so those video links won't be functioning. And so we do encourage companies to highly compress the video, and we offer a whole set of server options for being able to store that compressed video either on the client's own website or on an exterior site.
Yeah, Paul, great answer. So indeed, please, if you want to know more about that, don't hesitate to get back in touch with us. Look, we want to thank you for attending to today's webinar. We want to thank you for being with us. A little factoid. I always like to have a quick factoid at the end, and I guess because we're all talking about Alibaba's Singles Day, that was the 11th of November, the number that I retained was $1 billion of sales in less than 5 minutes. How about that? $1 billion of sales in less than 5 minutes. That growth rate was 32% up on last year. There's a very interesting Financial Times article detailing that. So with that, we're closing out. We hope that you have enjoyed the webinar. I do remind you that this is one in a series to help you grow your business internationally. Next up, subjects will include how to sell online in Europe and build and market websites for India. So don't hesitate to join us again soon. There will be the survey now. So 5 quick questions on your screen. Please give us a second or two more of your time so that we can better serve you going forward. And don't forget that, of course, you will be getting the slide deck, which will be arriving automatically for you in a few days' time. In fact, that will be on Thursday as we go through and prepare it for you. So we hope that you enjoyed the webinar. We hope that you found the information useful. I'd like to thank Susanna and Paul very, very much indeed. And on behalf of us all, to show our appreciation, yes, that is for Susanna. Jet lag and all, that is for Paul. Good morning and good night, and I hope that you sleep well. Thank you for your time. And we hope that you had lots of useful takeaways, and thank you again for joining us on this webinar on e-commerce in China. Thank you again. Goodbye.